Hello, pre-calculus students. This is Miss Robinson, and today we will be beginning our Chapter 5 notes with Section 5.1 on composite functions. So we have just a little bit of vocabulary to begin with. We want to define a composite function. Alright, so this is the definition in your textbook. Given two functions, f and g, the composite function, denoted by f composed with g, as it says I should read it here, is defined by f composed with g of x equals, it's a little bit tough to see, but this is an equals sign, f of g of x. Okay? Meaning that the domain of f composed with g is a set of all numbers x in the domain of g such that g of x is in the domain of f. Meaning that the variable of g of x is x, and then essentially the variable of f is now being replaced with g of x. So if you remember when we did f of x, we say that this is the function f of the variable x, right? And if we want to figure out instances where x equals some number or other variable, we would replace it right here, right? So we could find f of 2, and this would just mean that wherever we see what was an x, we will replace it with a 2. So let's say, for instance, that our function is f of x equals x cubed plus 4. Actually, I'll continue that. Plus 4x plus 1. So if I wanted to find f of 2 of this function, I would replace every x value with a 2. So this would become 2 cubed plus 4 times 2 plus 1, and I would end up with some number. Same would apply if I wanted to just plug in a different variable. Let's go with a little bit more complicated instance. So what if I wanted to find h plus 1? Okay. Again, this is where x was before, so I'm just going to replace my variable x with whatever this is. So instead of x here, I'm going to have h plus 1 cubed. Instead of x here, I'm going to have 4 times h plus 1, and then I have my plus 1. Same we are going to see applies to composite functions. Wherever we see the variable in the outside function, we're just going to replace it with this inside function. So let's take an example. So if we go down to example 1, we're going to try I on letter A, and then 4 on letter A as well. Okay, so if I look at I, or 1 for this one, this is telling me to find g composed with f of negative 2. If we follow this rule up here, g composed with f means that g would be the outside function as it comes first, and then f would be the inside function as it comes second. And then instead of x, we are going to have negative 2 this time. So this g composed with f of negative 2 is really g of f of negative 2. Okay, so this means that in the function f, or for my function f, I'm going to take the input negative 2. So if I look here, f of negative 2 is 3. Okay, so this value here is 3. So I'm going to rewrite this. G of, and instead of f of negative 2, I know that that equals 3. Okay, now I have this outside function. I'm going to find g of 3 now. So I'm going to look here for where my x is 3, and I see that g of 3 is 1. Okay? So that's the first letter. Let's try this fourth one here. So this time we're going to have G composed with G of negative 3. So G composed with G of negative 3. If we rewrite this, we see that this is the same as the outside function, G, of the inside function, which is still G of negative 3. Okay. So now I'm going to start in and work my way out again. So I'm going to start at the inside and replace G of negative 3 with what G equals at negative 3. So I'm going to go to G, find negative 3. So G of negative 3 equals 1. So I can replace G of negative 3 on the inside with 1. And now I have G of 1. So I'm going to look for the x, 1, and I don't have one, right? So if I don't have an input, there is no output, right? So does not exist. There is no answer for G of 1. Okay. So that tells us that when we take these composite functions, we need to pay attention to what we are putting into our function and then what we would get out of the inside function. So if we get a range from this inside function that can't work inside the outside function, we're going to have problems, right? So we need to pay attention to the range of this second or inside function as that affects the domain of the outside function, right? We can't take G of 1. Alright. So I did the first and the fourth letter on A of example 1. I want you at home to pause this video and now do below here the second and third parts to this problem. As you saw, this did not take me very long, so it should not take you very long to do these last two on your own. Okay, so I will be checking these in your notes, so make sure that you finish these two on your own. I'm going to do the same for B. So on B of example 1, we're going to do I, the first one, together. So G composed with F of negative 2. We're going to rewrite this using our rule. So first function on the outside, second function on the inside. So this becomes G of F of negative 2, what my variable equals, right here on this outside. Okay. This time I'm going to be looking at my graph. So right now the graph is a little tough to see, so I'm going to zoom in. That's better. Okay, so we're going to start our way from the inside. So I want to start with F of negative 2. So I'm going to look for where my x is negative 2. Looks like it's right here. And then I'm going to look at my f function. So f at negative 2. I do not have a value. So can I take f of negative 2? No. Does not exist. I cannot take that value. Therefore, I cannot take G of f of negative 2. Okay. Let's move on to the fourth example here. So this time, G of negative 3. We want to rewrite that. G of negative 3. So we're going to start from the inside. So G of negative 3. So I'm going to look for negative 3. And then my G value looks at negative 3. I have 3 as my value. So this is going to become G of 3 instead, as G of negative 3 is 3. And then I'm going to continue the process. So now I'm taking the function g where x equals 3. So I'm going to find x equals 3. And then I'm going to find my g value. It looks to be at about 4. So g composed with g of negative 3 is 4, or g of negative 3 is 4. Okay. Again, at home right now I want you to pause this video and I want you to do the second and third parts of this problem. Okay. Again, you saw this took me maybe 1 or 2 minutes. Same should go for both of these examples. Not very much time. You can handle it. I will be checking your notes for these things, and so will Mrs. Tran-Bloom. So make sure that you're finishing these. Okay. Next we will have example 2. So make sure you move on to that one.